So in this segment, we're going to be discussing John Redwood basically made to shut up by a Labour MP, and this is pretty brutal stuff here, especially over the the Brexit promises and things that they said would happen as a result of us voting for Brexit. And John Redwood saying, "Oh, we should vote against the Windsor Framework because of all the problems and blah 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 nonsense," when it was the reason we have the Windsor Framework, the reason we have the Northern Ireland Protocol, is because of Brexit. You know, you can't spin that.
To the Honourable Gentleman.
So what is the point of rushing through a vote on this protocol when it is the protocol and the agreement behind it that prevents Stormont meeting, which means the protocol would never be used?
So he's talking about the, I think he's talking about the Stormont break there. I'm not 100% sure because he's used the word protocol a couple of times.
Well, he makes the argument for why you should have voted against the protocol in the first place. Yeah. We on this side did oppose the protocol when it was imposed. He voted for it. Now, there are lots of people on that side, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I listen to with great interest because they often contribute a lot of thoughtful insight into the way we debate. But let's...
You know, I genuinely hate when parliamentarians do this fake polite things like, which Tory MP has anything of interest to say? Which one? None of them do, honestly.
Just reflect on what the Right Honourable Member for Wokingham said in the run-up to the Brexit referendum. The promises that he made to this country.
He's about to drop the hammer here. This is great.
This all came from his website because I read it with great interest. 1, there will be more growth in the economy. 2, it'll rebuild our fisheries. 3, food will be cheaper. 4, our power will be cheaper. We will have fewer unhelpful regulations. Well, if that's the case, we wouldn't be here debating this today, would we? 6, we will get a US trade deal. And 7, our balance of payments will improve. There are many people who should be contributing to this debate in a thoughtful way. He, I'm afraid, is not one of them.
But if we go through each one of his promises, right, let's have a look.
His website, because I read it with great interest. 1, there will be more growth in the economy.
You know, the UK is still not back to pre-pandemic levels compared to other G7 nations. So, you know, the growth in the economy bit, that's a lie.
2, it'll rebuild our fisheries.
The fishing industry is struggling even more now because they're struggling to export the fish that they would normally sell to the EU. And they're often having to freeze the fish because the EU don't really accept chilled meat products into the EU. So frozen fish is worth less than fresh fish. They're also having massive issues with the paperwork and other things, and also the arrangement we have with the EU around fishing isn't what the fishermen actually wanted. And the further problem they have is that the EU had a fishing agreement with, or has a fishing agreement with Norway. The UK had to come up with its own agreement with Norway. We decided to mess around with the Nords. The Nords said, "Okay, fine, no fishing agreement for you." And you have a lot of British fishing vessels that are stuck with nothing to do. Basically, there's a big one in Hull. That was used to fish in kind of the Nordic waters, which can't even operate now because it's not financially viable. So it's just sat there.
3, food will be cheaper.
Boom, food's not cheaper because of the cost of importing the food has gone up dramatically, which means that, you know, trying to get in, you know, tomatoes, lettuce, peppers, all that kind of stuff, that's gone up a lot, just the cost of those. Any food that we import's gone up, the cost has gone up a lot. You've got the currency fluctuations, which also damage our imports. You have a lack of agricultural staff because of the end of freedom of movement, which means that we can't even get the food out of the ground in the UK, and that's led to farmers basically planting less.
4, our power will be cheaper.
With the power thing, I still need to do research. I need someone to help me understand the EU's internal energy market properly for me to actually understand this one. But when it comes to the UK, I think a lot of the stuff is down to the Tories and their stupid policies rather than anything else. But, you know, if it is down to the internal energy market stuff, I'll happily take someone's understanding of it.
We will have fewer unhelpful regulations.
And, you know, there's the argument of deregulation here, when deregulation makes no sense and it would just make our exports go to cost more and would require more checks to export goods. So it doesn't make sense.
Well, if that's the case, we wouldn't be here debating this today, would we? 6, we will get a US trade deal.
But we're not going to get one. To be fair, the Americans have said more recently that they're looking to get a US trade deal with us. They're hoping to do that in the next 3 to 4 years, depending on if Biden wins a second term and what the makeup of Congress is. So that one's not too outlandish, but given the fact that if we didn't have the Northern Ireland Protocol, if we didn't have the Windsor Framework. The only reason the Americans are agreeing to talk to us over a trade deal is because of the Windsor Framework and the fact that we are showing goodwill over the Good Friday Agreement. If we weren't doing that, if we wanted to do what Sir John Redwood wants to do, which is basically not have, the protocol or the framework, then there would be no US trade deal. So he's partially right and also partially wrong, John Redwood, I mean.
7, our balance of payments will improve.
So our balance of payments, I think it's gotten worse depending on if you really care about trade deficits. Some people do, some people don't. I'm not too bothered about them, but the problem is I think we're exporting less in terms of goods and services to the EU, and we're also importing more goods from the EU, which means our balance of payments, or the deficit is going up, the trade deficit. So that's not great.
There are many people who should be contributing to this debate in a thoughtful way. He, I'm afraid, is not one of them.
That's just a burn, John Redwood definitely should not be one of them. None of the Brexiteers, none of the ERG type Brexiteers or the really radical right wing Brexiteers should be contributing anything to the conversation, because they're the reason we're in this mess. They're the reason why Stormont is closed. If we had the Brexit that we could have gotten, potentially that was on the table at the time, of single market access, similar to maybe like an EFTA country. That's something Barnier spoke about, but the problem is we can't get that now. We're no longer, whilst we're an EU member, the EU was willing to make carve-outs for members, but, now we're outside the club. Now we're not an EU member. They won't make such an exception for us. And also the fact that, for the most part, the Windsor Framework resolves the main issue they were concerned about, which is trade going from Northern Ireland to Ireland, essentially the open border, which has been mostly resolved by the Windsor Framework. So, they have no reason to really give us single market access anyways, in case anyone does try and argue about that. But point being is that Brexit's been an absolute disaster, and he's just laid it out there. He's taken John Redwood's own words from his website, which, he's got the brass not to have it. I would have changed that website real quick after the referendum. This stuff is still up there, which shows you that my man, clearly has no idea what he's talking about. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Shouts out to this Labour MP. Not familiar with his name. Is there anyone here who mentions it? Not familiar with his name. If anyone does know, let me know in the comments. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.